challenges, opportunity to practice. And it's only true that training our mind to how to cope and deal with those challenges more healthy way, more positively. That will help us to keep our mind more calm, more sane, more peaceful. Otherwise, it can drive us crazy. And to be able to do that, we have to train our mind, work with our mind, not just one time, one day, 1 week, 1 month, but year after years before we can reach that point. That is the reason why we are coming here together. So that we remind each other, encourage each other, inspire each other. To work with our own mind, with our own thoughts, emotions. So no matter how adversary, difficult situations that could arise in our life, so we can transform them into something virtuous, something positive. So that we can transform them as a way to generate even more loving kindness, compassion, and transform them in the path to the enlightenment. May our coming together here, listening, discussing, engaging reflections, become a cause and conditions to achieve our highest potential, fully awakened state, so we can be most help and benefit to each and every sentient being. Okay, so then we can have the prayer. I think today I want to go to just refuge and bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodam soge chonam la chanchu patu tane kapsu dagi shoshe gibe sonam Lola Tenje Sangye Lupa Sangye Chodan Doge Jonama Changju Bado Dani Lagi Choche Gibe Sonan Lola Tenje Sangye Lupa Kanje Dujene Sone Adam Japan Bede Tambe Chune Tenje Bodam De La Chaksa. So, starting from last Sunday for 10-12 weeks, we will be going through the mind training by Geshe Chekawa, 7.0 mind training. And the 7 points, as we, is first is a preliminary supporting Dharma practice. That is the first point, And then second point is engaging training into the path to enlightenment. Third is transforming all the adversity conditions or circumstances into the path. Fourth is integrating the practices in one lifetime. Fifth is the measure of having trained the mind. And sixth is the commitment of the mind training. 7 is the advices of the mind training. So these are the 7 points that we will be going to. And I think in last week, we just touched on the first point, the preliminary, practices that support our Dhamma practices, and especially that supports the actual main practice, which is training in the the awakened mind, the mind of the enlightenment. So last week I kind of touched on a little bit on preliminary, in terms of the preliminary during the sessions, and as well as preliminary practices, general in terms of the whole practice, these instructions. And within that, in most of the commentary, they're kind of summarized in the 4 practice. But generally speaking, all the practice of, when we study the lumbering, all the practice of small scope and middle scope are the preliminary practices. But when we summarize some of the main practice into the 4, it is precious human rebirth, and death impermanent, and karma, law of cause and effect, and then reflecting, contemplating on shortcoming or faults of the samsara, and cultivating dissatisfaction with the samsara. So those 4 points. And so with relation to the first point, as we reflect, contemplate, we try to reflect, contemplate, and understand how fortunate we are, how lucky we are to have this present human life. You know, every day we try to reflect, contemplate. You know, not only we have human life, you know, because not only human life, but precious human life, you know, because not all human beings have same, you know, circumstances like us, good circumstances, favorable conditions like we have in relation to practice the Dharma, you know. Of course, if we kind of compare with the animals, you know, animal life is quite clear, you know, it's very hard for the animal to train their mind. Practicing the Dharma is training your mind, you know, not just intuitive, but actually training your mind through certain way of reflecting, contemplating, analyzing, and that, you know. And so the animals has very limited access or potentials or ability to really practice Dharma from that point of view. And even within the human being, even we are born as a human beings, you know, and if we say all the now, if we are born in a place, you know, where there's no access to the Dharma, even you have the intention to practice the Dharma, you know, and even in this world, there are many places, you know, where people does not have the freedom or the access to practice the Dharma. Many parts of the world, you know, and even we have in a place where there is access to Dharma, and even where there's a freedom to practice the Dharma, you know, if our mind is closed mind, and if our mind is not open, you know, if our mind is totally closed, you know, even without exploring, even without really trying to understand, we just met some close our mind based on, you know, our own feelings, or based on some of misinformations that you might have heard, and then people just totally do not even try to explore what it is, whether it's helpful or not helpful, whether it's beneficial or not. Sometimes we totally close our mind, even without investigating, analyzing, exploring. And if we have that kind of mindset, again, we will not have the access to the Dharma, you know. And even our mind is open and not kind of, even our mind is open, you know, if we have some challenges, you know, physically, mentally, you know, due to disabilities, physical disability, mental disability, again, you know, it will be not easy. It will be quite challenging to be able to practice the Dharma on more deeper level, on more profound level, you know. And so again, we are not that situation. And in some cases, even your physically, mentally, you know, you don't have any kind of disabilities, you know. But for whatever reason, you know, you don't have interest. You don't have interest in learning the Dharma, studying the Dharma, practicing the Dharma. Again, that will be another obstacles. In our cases, at least, again, we have the interest, you know. And even you have interest, you know, there are a lot of people who have really, they find helpful, beneficial, and interest, but, you know, where they are, they don't have access to teachers, they don't have access, they don't have the support of the teachers, they don't have support of the sanghas. So many conditions, So again, then it's not so easy for them, even you have the interest in that, So therefore, when we reflect, contemplating that way, then we begin to feel, how fortunate and lucky we are, and there is something we can rejoice about, we can rejoice that we have all these favorable conditions, at least favorable condition for us to study and practice the Dharma, so we can always feel grateful and rejoice, and this human life, with that precious human life, we have all conducive condition, we are free from all the obstacles to practice the Dharma, and if we can really utilize it well, this human life has the potential to achieve our happiness in this life, happiness of future life, happiness of liberation, happiness of fully enlightenment. And so by recognizing those potentials, by recognizing that we have gathered all the conducive conditions, we try to make most of it and not waste it. And it is not easy to find such precious human life again in the futures, to have precious human life, it requires a lot of many causes and conditions, the practice such as, pure ethical discipline, supported by practice of generosity, proper prayer, dedication, and the practice such as the practice of perfections, and so forth. There are many cause conditions, and we know, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. So because the cause is not easy, so the result will also not be so easy to attain again. And by understanding that, then we come to, through that meditation, contemplation, we come to a certain conclusion that I have to make most of it, this incredible opportunity, make most of it. And how can we make most of it? How can we make it meaningful, beneficial? Is to practice the Dharma. Practicing the Dharma means working with your mind, reducing those negative emotions and cultivating and increasing those positive emotions. Loving kindness, compassion, patience, generosity, contentment, wisdom, and so forth. That is not only practice the Dharma, but the Mahayana, the Bodhisattvas practice, the Mahayana practice. So then, so we try to feel that and inspire ourselves, encourage ourselves to practice the Dharma more, not only practice the Dharma more strongly, more purely. And making that as, as the main purpose of our life. And whereas other things that we need to kind of, being in this world, of course, we have to take care of many other things, but that being kind of more like a side, and practicing Dharma becoming the main purpose of our life, instead of the practice of Dharma becoming the secondary, so to make it, the worldly activity become more kind of secondary, and Dharma practice become main. focus, and so to be able to feel that way, you know. So basically, and then, you know, even we have this precious human life with incredible potential, with all the conducive conditions, but, you know, this life does not last forever, you know. The reality is we all have to die. Once we are born, we all have to die, whether you like it or not. We cannot escape that reality. And not only we have to die, you know, we have no confidence that we will not die soon, you know. We cannot guarantee and feel confidence that we will not die anytime. So, you know, because there are so many external and internal causes for the death to end the life, you know, so many external as well as internal causes that can arise as manifest anytime and take our life. So therefore, not only we need to practice the Dharma, but we need to practice the Dharma sooner without postponing it, because the life, the death does not wait for us. As it is said in Shantideva, you know, the dead does not, Lord of the dead does not wait whether we have finished our job or not, whether we have finished our project or not, whether we have finished our Dharma practice or not, you know. If it waits, then we can say, we can postpone, and we can say we can do later, and always keep. But since that is not the case, then we shouldn't be postponing, you know, and we should try to practice immediately as much as possible, you know, immediately applying as much as possible, instead of putting down tomorrow all the time, where tomorrow never comes, and where death could come before tomorrow, you know. That is what we have been doing, tomorrow for many years. And again, we will keep on doing tomorrow. And before the actual tomorrow arrives, death has already come, you know. And so therefore, so with that, then we try to, by meditating, reflecting on death impermanent, you know, then it should inspire us, encourage us to practice the Dharma as soon as possible without postponing it. And also, what really helps at the time of death and after the death is all our Dharma practice. That is all. Everything else we leave behind. Everything else we leave behind. We can't take anything else except our Dharma practice. Also, with that understanding, then it should inspire us to give more time to our Dharma practice. Encourage, inspire us to, and after death, you know, it doesn't stop like when candles, when you burn candle, when the light run out, you know, there is no continuity. But our consciousness, mind continue carrying the karmic imprint, you know. And according to our karmic imprint, then what kind of life we have in the futures, it very much depends on those karmic imprint and the potentials, you know, whether we are going to have a more happy and peaceful life, or whether we are going to have a much more challenging, difficult, painful, suffering life. Those our karmic potential has a huge influence, effect on that. You know, so therefore, karma follow us, like a shadow, Of course, shadow is always there, even though sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't see it, depending on conditions, from where the light is coming, and many other different conditions. But the shadow is always there, even when we don't see it. Same way, all the karmic potentials, imprint, is always there. Sometimes we see it due to certain cause and conditions. It is obvious. It's easy to see it. Sometimes it is not so obvious. Sometimes it's subtle. And we think maybe, oh, there is no consequences of such actions or behavior. But the consequences is there. Just because we cannot see it, it doesn't mean it is not there. Just like because of certain way of lightning and condition, just because we don't see the shadow, it doesn't mean there is no shadow. Similarly, so therefore, through that, having the conviction in the karma, law of cause and effect, through that conviction, then we try to not to create even the most tiniest negative karma as much as possible, and trying to cultivate and generate as much virtuous and positive actions, karma, as much as possible. And by understanding, basically, again, the reason to understand the law of cause and effect, the karma, is to help us to become better persons. Through understanding karma, we know our negative karma brings suffering to ourselves and to others. We know due to our positive karma, it can bring happiness, good for ourselves and others. And therefore, we try to reduce and refrain from any actions, any negative actions or non-virtuous action that will bring more pain, suffering to oneself and others. And we try to engage into as much as possible into any kind of virtuous actions, positive action that will be beneficial and bring more joy, happiness to oneself and others. That is all. That is the main purpose of reflecting, contemplating on karma, Understanding karma and then practicing karma is that. To help, through that conviction, karma, to help us to transform our unhealthy, unwholesome, negative physical behavior, verbal behavioral actions, and mental attitudes into something more healthy, wholesome, virtuous, positive physical behavior, verbal actions, and mental attitude. So that is the key, and that should be the case. And so again, understanding and conviction karma, helping us to have more conviction in the Dharma and to inspire, to practice the Dharma more strongly and more purely. And through, having practiced more virtues, less negativities, less non-virtues, and through that, due to that kind of strong karmic positive karmic seed or virtue karmic seed. And even though we have a better life, more higher rebirth, and not only higher rebirth, even within the higher rebirth, such as human beings, less challenges, less sufferings, where you don't have to struggle all the time in terms of, our health, where we don't have to struggle all the time in terms of our financial situations, where we don't have to struggle all the time in terms of our relationships. So, pretty much quite well within the human life, with less struggles, less challenges with all these kind of things, but still it is samsara. Still it is samsara. Therefore, as long as we are in samsara, regardless of any of 5 or 6 realms, wherever you are, as long as we are samsara, still we are bound by our contaminated karma and delusions. So still we have no freedom. Still our being and our state is very much driven by the karma and delusions. Not having the freedom, that itself is suffering. Being the slave and prisoner of the karma and the delusion itself is the suffering. Suffering doesn't always has to be some kind of physical pain or even strong kind of emotional pain, like a strong fear, or just when we are slave of something else, when we don't have freedom of ourselves, when we become prisoner of something else, when we become slave of something else, that itself is suffering. And so, as long as samsara, that is what it is. Samsara means we are still prisoner of the delusions and contaminated karma. We are still slave of that. And that itself is suffering. And even within the samsara, even we have some kind of, temporary happiness, pleasure, joy, when we're hungry, we eat, we have delicious food, we eat, we get some level of joy, happiness, pleasure, when it's cold outside, we come inside house, we have the heat, warm, that give us some pleasure, joy, happiness. When it is hot, you go in the shade, you get some breeze, there's some kind of joy, happiness. So, we have good relationship with someone and we are nice to each other, we talk good about each other, and that makes us a little bit happy, joy. But all of those happiness, joy, pleasure, temporary pleasure, joy, happiness, all of them never give us lasting satisfactions. So, samsaric experience, no matter how pleasure that it might seem, no matter how much joyful, pleasant it might feel, they all does not last forever. So therefore, they do not give us lasting satisfactions. It always leads to dissatisfaction, disappointment. Once that experience will not last forever, And when that experience is gone, then we are disappointed. We started to miss that. And when we started to miss that, then that is the dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction, that missing something, which you enjoyed before, now because you don't have that, we started to be dissatisfied and missing that, and that makes us unhappy and suffering. And so therefore, all the samsaric, no matter how pleasant they might feel, experience in the nature of dissatisfactions. So through reflecting, contemplating on dissatisfactory nature of the samsara and the suffering nature of the samsara, then we try to overcome our attachment and clinging and grasping to the samsaric experiences and samsaric state, no matter how great they might look. And once we are able to do that, if we can do that through that kind of meditation, contemplations, then we really started to feel the aspirations for the true liberations. Then when we talk about nirvana or liberation, then it doesn't just become a word, but it becomes so real in our mind. At the moment, even though we use liberation and nirvana very much all the time, it is just in our mouth, in tongue, not in here, in our heart. In our heart, we are still totally kind of attached and clinging and grasping to the samsaric experience and samsaric pleasures and the state of samsara itself. And so therefore, our practice, even when we try to do practice, therefore the practice is not so strong. That is why it's not so strong. And why it's not so as pure and strong as it can be, you know. And that's why we continue to get distracted to samsara and samsaric experiences. And that's why we struggle to find time and energy to practice true Dharma, pure Dharma. Why do we struggle? You know, we always struggle, we always struggle to find the time and energy to practice the Dharma. Because our mind is, not driven to that enlightenment, liberation from depth of your heart, because our mind is so distracted and so grasping and clinging to the samsaric things, On the other hand, some of the practitioners, in terms of their responsibility, they have much more responsibility than ourselves. They have so much responsibility in terms of job, to take care of. But they never struggle to find time for their practice. For example, you can see His Holiness Dalai Lama, If you look at his schedule, he's so busy, meeting here and there all the time, teaching, meeting all the time. Not only he is able to bring the practice within each of those, whatever things he's doing, each of them are practiced, but still he makes sure that he finds 4 or 5 hours every day to sit quiet for himself, to reflect, contemplate, meditate, practice. Despite he's much more busy than ourselves in terms of others' responsibility. We can see Lama Sopa Rinpoche, same thing, We struggle when we are take care of one organization, for example, like when I was headmaster, or as someone is center director, or in different responsibility of one particular organizations, because there's a lot of things to do, but we somehow struggle to find time and energy to practice the Dharma, because we feel so kind of we get tired after all this, and then we don't have the anymore of we feel like we don't have the any more of energy to practice. And because if we have true inspiration to the liberation, if we don't have any clinging and grasping, there will be energy coming from inside, and that's what those masters are able to do. And even all my teachers, I can see, like even Gandhi Rinpoche, when whom you have met when he was Changji Choje Rinpoche, who came here, he used to teach 4 or 5 classes every day. And then he has, again, other commitments, meeting the students, individuals, and all of that. Despite all of that, again, they find sure to find 4 or 5 hours a day of practice every day. That is the way that I think, because from their point of view, they have this true inspiration for the liberations, and they have no clinging or less clinging and grasping to the samsara by having understood the dissatisfaction nature of samsara, the sufferings. And so therefore that is what they have more energy, and the energy does not come from physically, their energies come from internally. And that is where when we have, so therefore through reflecting and contemplating on that, then on shortcoming and fault of samsara, then it will really give us the inspiration and energy towards our practice. Not only to our practice, to make our practice more stronger, to make our practice more pure, and so therefore that is why these topics, this subject, meditating on them is preliminary, as a preliminary supporting Dharma practice. So these are preliminary to support the Dharma practice, and not only Dharma practice, especially the actual main practice here is cultivating or generating the bodhicitta, the true awakening mind, or the bodhicitta mind towards enlightenment. And so those practice, meditation, help as a foundations, as a preliminary, as a basis to have a more stronger awakening mind, or the bodhicitta mind. Once we understand, as we reflect on how it helps, for example, the more convictions we have about, as long as we are in samsara, as long as we are under the control of delusions and the karma, how that itself is suffering, and how that cannot give us true lasting happiness. When we have that when we have that understanding and convictions from our heart, then when we see other sentient beings, even though they are very successful, they have good health, they have good relationship, they have fame, they have lots of money. All of that still you can see, even though all seems great, but you can still see, they are still in samsara. And as long as they're in samsara, they are still having another form of suffering. And when you feel that, then you can feel compassion for them, because you can see and you can feel their pain and suffering in a different way, on more subtle level. Then that helps us to develop love, compassion, and bodhicitta towards them. So that is how it helps. Same if we have a better understanding of karma, someone who is engaging in harmful actions, even though they are not experiencing any kind of consequences of that now, or even someone is not suffering, but when we understand karma, when we have conviction, then we know everyone has so much negative karmic potentials to produce suffering in the future, anytime or in the futures. And those, when cause and condition come, those karmic potential manifest and come, and that will give. And so again, when you see that again, you can feel compassion for them. It's like they are not experiencing suffering at the moment, even when they are not experiencing suffering immediately, but you see the potential is there for them to experience in the future. And so by seeing that the potentials, karmic see the potential is in that person who, even though he's not suffering now, but he or she, because that potential, when certain cause and condition come, then that can lead to a lot of pain and suffering in the future. So therefore, again, when you see that, you start to feel compassion again, because you can see, you can feel the pain and suffering that is almost like waiting there to manifest anytime when the cause and condition comes. So therefore, that is where this preliminary practice are very important foundations in order to have stronger loving kindness, compassion that is directed to all sentient beings, and the bodhicitta mind that is directed to all sentient beings. And the stronger foundation you have, the more easier it become for us to feel loving kindness, to have loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta to all other sentient beings. If we don't have those strong foundations, even when we try to develop love and compassion, bodhicitta, we will struggle. We might be able to develop those minds with certain people, certain sentient beings, but we will struggle with certain individuals. We will struggle, we will have very strong resistance in our mind and strong struggles to feel that kind of love and compassion which we feel for someone else, but we struggle to feel that same way to someone else. That happens when we don't have those strong foundation practices. But if you have those strong foundation practices, meditations, then we will have less struggle, less difficulties of to be able to develop and feel the same love, compassion, bodhicitta towards each and every sentient beings. And so I think with that, I think we don't need to go so detailed, okay, of all of that. And those are the preliminary supportive Dhamma practice. That is the first point of 7 points, okay? And in that there is only one verse, not verse, one line, and then next we go to the second the second point of the second point of the 7 point, and that is the main actual practice of meditations of all of them. So we will have a 10-minute breaks, okay? And then again, if anyone has any questions, please feel without any hesitations to ask or to write and send by the chat, okay? So we will have 10 minutes break.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Can you prescribe daily practice for an individual?
Yes, maybe. Can you well, I guess it might not be so easy to give daily practice to everyone here, same, because many people have their own daily practice, and it can differ from individuals, you know. Some have more kind of advanced daily practice. Some have more basic daily practice, depending on.
Then can I contact you later? Or...
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What is your email?
Are you clear?
Claire, I can send it to you.
Yeah, okay. So we'll see you later, okay? Ten minutes break, okay? So as I was saying at just before the break, now we start the second point of the 7-point, which is training the mind in cultivating the awakening mind of bodhicitta. And within that, you know, there's a training to the training the mind to generate the ultimate awakening mind of the bodhicitta, and as well as the training the mind in cultivating the conventional awakening mind of the bodhicitta. And again, the whole essence of all the Buddha's teachings basically come to that, you know. The two bodhicitta, the ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta, you know. Some of the practice are as a foundation of those, to cultivate those two bodhicitta. Some of them as the actual means and technique or meditation to develop that. Some of them as a fruit of those two bodhicitta mind, or as a advice and so forth. So within that, so normally in the actual root text, the cultivating the the ultimate awakened mind is first, and then conventional awakened mind comes second. But I think Paponga Rinpoche kind of seems to have changed the sequences a little bit. And so here we go through the training the mind in cultivating the Bodhicitta awakened mind, conventional Bodhicitta awakened mind. And so what does that Bodhicitta or awakened mind means? First, maybe before we actually go more details, you know, it is a state of, it is inspirations or state of mind, a wish or aspirations that wish to achieve our own highest potential, fully awakened state. The Buddha would, in order to help and liberate all sentient beings from all their suffering and cause of suffering, and to lead them to ultimate happiness of fully enlightenment. And so in Bodhicitta, there's two inspirations. One inspiration is directed towards the sentient beings in order to liberate, in order to free them from the suffering and cause of suffering, and to guide them to fully enlightenment. There's one wish or inspiration. Then other is, in order to do that, then by seeing the need to achieve fully enlightenment, so then the wish or inspiration to achieve that fully enlightenment. And so that is the Bodhicitta mind. That state of the mind is what we call Bodhicitta mind. And of course, at the very beginning, again, you know, when we are still training, that kind of mind does not come effortlessly or naturally or easily. When someone is not trained enough. But with effort, we can try to develop, cultivate that a little bit. And as we practice more and more, and with more practice, more familiarity, then a practitioner reach a point where they can have that mind, you know, effortlessly, naturally, spontaneously, day and night. And whenever they see any sentient beings, that kind of, without having tried, whenever they see, hear, or reflect on any suffering sentient beings, immediately that mind arises without any effort, you know. So when we have reached that, then that is when we have really cultivated the realization of Bodhicitta mind, conventional Bodhicitta mind, you know. And that is when we enter the first Bodhisattva path, you know. So that is the Bodhicitta, the awakening mind, okay? But to reach that point, we have to go through many different practices and meditations, many different, you can say, technique, method, different meditations that we train to reach to that point of your mind, you know. And so, and one of the in order to have that Bodhicitta mind, there are two need to be done, you know. One is to reduce, and slowly and gradually, and eventually totally overcome the selfish attitude, because that is the main obstacles. The selfish attitude is the main obstacle to develop that Bodhicitta mind. And then to cultivate, develop, and increase and improve the cherishing thought for others by understanding the kindness of others. because that is the main root cause to cultivate that bodhicitta mind. That is the main conducive right conditions or cause or condition to develop bodhicitta mind. And so therefore, that being the case, so then that is where it comes, the next verse. Where it says, training the conventional awakened mind. So the first verse, the one translation we have is banish the one to blame for everything. I kind of like other translation where it says, put all the blame on the one. And that seems to be more, so what it means is, all the suffering that ourselves and others experiences in the samsara, different sufferings within the different realms, all 6 realms, as well as, so all the suffering that we have experienced in the past in 6 realms, as well as the suffering that we are experiencing now, the sufferings or any kind of, others, adversity, situations, difficult, challenging circumstances, events, encountering those which we do not want, which, and such as, our physical health issues, or such as mental health issues that we might encounter, such as difficult relationship, the pain, the suffering that we experience due to difficult relationship, be it with, 2 partners, wife, husband, or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, or relation, the suffering we go through because our, difficult relationship with a parent and children, or among different friends, within our friend, with our colleagues, or, challenging situations, difficult situations on our, for example, in our finance situations, where we struggles and where we have a lot of challenges, whatever, economic challenges, financial or economic challenges. Or sometimes we have, sometimes we suffer because of, again, due to change in elements, weathers, too cold, too hot, or because there's too much pollutions, or unclean water and so forth, unhygiene, so whatever. So due to many, those all which something we do not wish, we don't want, but we continue to face them. through that, we experience a lot of challenges, pain, sufferings. And our ordinary, normal way of responding to that, when we face any kind of challenging, difficult adversities, circumstance or situation, our ordinary, normal way of responding is to point a finger to others and blame others for that situations. Sometimes we blame certain individuals. Sometimes we blame certain group of people. Sometimes we blame the system. Sometimes we blame outside something else. So that is, we always immediately, when something that happens, our natural, our ordinary natural way of reacting is to point the finger outside somewhere and blame. That is our kind of more kind of ordinary, for our ordinary like us, more natural way, more kind of intuitive way of responding it. And when we do that, then it only increases our delusions. Then we become more angry, more upset. So then those delusions, attachment, anger, ignorance, and other delusion cultivate or arises and increase and become more intense, more stronger. And through that, we experience more pain and more sufferings immediately due to one of those negative emotion arises due to that. And then we create a lot of negative karma due to that. And due to that, we make things much more worse again. It's like adding more fuel to the fire. So then when our mind is kind of disturbed, agitated due to one of those negative emotions, then it only adds more fuel to the problems, the situations, the suffering, the pain. So then, we lose our loving kindness, our compassion declines in those states, in those situations, when our mind is disturbed, agitated in that way. Then even you are more compassionate, kind person generally in that state. When you are in that state mind, then your love, compassion, your bodhicitta mind started to kind of decline to a certain degree, and yeah. So here, what it's saying, when you are training our mind to cultivate more loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind, when we are training our mind to enlightenment, when we are training our mind to the path, we should reverse that way of responding. we should not respond, react that way, but instead, other way around. Instead of pointing outside, we point inside and blame all of those suffering, pain, and situations to the selfish attitude, our own selfish attitude. So put all the blame to the one. What is the one? That selfish attitude. So then we blame all of them to just one selfish attitude. And if we really think about it, you know, when we encounter those situations, difficulties, adversities, challenging circumstance, situation, even so forth, why our mind is disturbed? Why our mind is disturbed due to that? It comes to our selfish attitude. If we don't have our mind, if we don't have selfish attitude, your mind will be not so disturbed, agitated by such events, situations, circumstances, no matter how difficult, how painful it is. Your mind will be not so disturbed and agitated. If your mind is not so agitated and disturbed, we will not experience as pain as we experience now. And also, it will not give rise. When your mind is unagitated and disturbed by those situations, then it will not give rise to anger, hatred, ill will feelings, all those other negative emotions. And then we will not react or respond in a negative way, unhealthy way towards others. We will not respond and react in a harmful and hurtful way. But we do, we often react in very much hurtful, harmful way. And because, again, our mind is disturbed, agitated, and angry. And that is because, we blame them for that. And because we blame them, our mind is agitated and disturbed. And our mind is agitated and disturbed, and we blame them because of our selfish attitude. Our selfish attitude always think we are right all the time. We are correct all the time. We feel we didn't make it was not our mistake, it was others' mistake. That is how our selfish attitude feel, It holds, the selfish attitude hold oneself as the center of the world, and it is all about protecting that. It doesn't matter whether it make mistake or not make a mistake. it is almost like to some degree, you know, like our leaders, you know, it has to be the leader feel that is the center of the whole world and everyone should treat him so well. You know, whether I make mistake or not mistake, everyone have to support me. That is how our selfish attitude feel that way. It is easy for us to understand when we point someone there, we can see, oh, that is really true, you know. Even when they make mistake, still blame others, cannot take responsibility, and cannot say, I take the blame. Always pointing out there. And always feel you need to be supported by people around you, all others, regardless whatever you make mistake or not make mistake. That is exactly how our selfish attitude feels. That is exactly how our selfish attitude feels. It feels like it is the center of the world, and it should be protected, regardless of whatever. So therefore, we don't want to listen to anything that seems to blame me, you know, and that is the problem. That is where the problem comes. If we look the whole world, you know, why people are fighting each other, you know, basically it is coming due to a selfish attitude. Everyone's feeling they are right, the other is wrong. Everyone's feeling what they think is correct, what other thing is incorrect. Everyone thinks the way they are doing is correct, what others doing is incorrect. Where does that kind come? Again, that's strong self-important. The selfish attitude, which regard the self-important and feel like you are the king. You are the king and the center of everything. There's no reason, you just feel that way. And that is the cause, you know. If we really think, you know, in terms of problem in our relationship with anyone, if we see it is it comes through selfish attitude. Through that selfish attitude, then we start to blame others. Then other is not willing to take the blame because they also have selfish attitude. They also feel that they did wrong and they blame you, and it is blaming game. And again, we see that throughout all over the world, on many, you know, on government level, you know, new government comes, and when something goes wrong, they blame the previous government or the opposition parties. When things go good, they take all the credit, and they don't give credit to the past government. They don't give credit to the opposition parties. That we understand is easy for us to see in the political world, in a governmental level. And it's not just one country, every country, more or less same. Except when we have exceptional leaders in some cases who have less selfish attitude, self-centeredness, who are more compassionate, more kind, more caring, and more respect for others. We have some exceptional such leader time to time in all over the world, but otherwise, that's what we see. And so that is on bigger picture on government. It's same in every organization. That's where among the different, the leaders of the organizations, again, it is the same mentality. That's how we work. Again, if something goes wrong, right, the leaders who are leading that organization, they take credit. If something goes wrong, then again, we tend to blame the previous administrations. Or we think, oh, I want to do best, but the members are not supporting me. You know, I have the best intention and I want to do best for the organization, but the other members are not supporting me. Again, it's blaming others again. That is our mentality. That is our, so that we see in from the country to a smaller, on a state level, local level, and not only local level, even within a small, even non-profit organizations. And then if we come closer in our families, when we have conflict in families, again, we blame each other. You know, when we have tough relationship, when we have some conflict, again, it is you know, very few people are able to kind of take the responsibility or take the blame on themselves in such situations. Even when we take some, you know, blame, you know, sometimes maybe we might be doing to solve the problem, but maybe inside you still feel it is not my problem, it's their problem. You know, because you wanted to kind of quiet the situations, so you say, oh, I take the blame. But inside, you haven't really felt that way, you know. Inside, you still feel he or she is the problem. But I don't want to kind of create more problems, so I just take blame. So that's sometimes, so again, when you don't take that blame from deeply from inside and just outside like that, then there is always going to be some feeling of resentment, you know. You still have some resentment. And that resentment will build up over the time. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, with different situations, small, and then one day it will explode, you know. Then you come with a page with all the lists, 100 lists, all the things that the other have done bad, you know. Oh, you remember you did this, that in 10 years ago. Do you remember that you said this and that during that time? Or do you remember that you did in that? And you can go for weeks and months and that, you know. I have heard some people, you know, because of their problem in relationship, and they went to see, they went for a therapist, and sometimes they say it is much more worse. They wish they didn't go, you know, some case, because in all the lists started coming every time they go, new list, what you did every time, and then, you know, it is just complain, blaming, you know, and that is what happened because we haven't still let it go. There's even because inside there is still resentment. We haven't dealt with that, and we haven't worked with that, and so that is the thing, you know. So therefore, So if we see, and all that come from selfish attitude, self-centeredness, you know. If we don't have self-centeredness, selfish attitude, then we don't feel we have to be the center of the world. And if someone doesn't treat you as the center of the world, you will be not upset, you will be okay. But when we have selfish and self-centeredness, we feel we are the center of the world. And when someone doesn't treat you as you are the center of the world, then our selfish attitude, our ego mind, our egoistic mind get upset, angry, hurt. When our egoistic mind get hurt, then that lead to anger, resentment, and hatred, and all of that, you know. So therefore, here, you know, when we train in training the mind in a bodhisattva path towards cultivating more, developing more love, compassion, bodhicitta, then the trick or the practice is to blame everything on that selfish attitude, that self-centeredness. Then you can, if you want to have all the list of that, then you can bring all list to this selfish attitude, self-centeredness. You can say from the beginning of lifetime, you know, we can have list. Each life, from beginning of life, in each of life, due to that selfish attitude, how much we have hurt ourselves, how much we have suffered, how much, due to that, how much we have hurt others, how much we have harmed others, how much we have brought suffering to others. And even this lifetime, from the very beginning of our starting of life, due to that selfish attitude, you know, that self-centeredness, we have been suffering so much because of that selfish attitude, self-centeredness. And we continue to experience similar suffering, pain, difficulty because of our selfish attitude. And if we don't try to reduce, overcome that, we will continue to suffer. We will continue to suffer because the cause is more from here, inside, than external. The main cause of the pain, the suffering, is inside and outside, our own selfish attitude. So here the training is to direct and point the finger, not outside, but inside. And that is the key. If all of us started doing that, we will not have a conflict. We will not have a conflict. Does that mean we wouldn't have differences? No, we will have differences. We will have differences in terms of our ideas, view on how to do things, different view, different ideas, different opinion on almost everything. We can have that. But that wouldn't be a conflict because we are not feeling hurt each other. My ego is not hurt, so therefore I don't feel I'm hurt. That person's ego is not hurt, that person doesn't feel that he is hurt. And because we don't feel hurt, we can listen better, we can talk better, we can communicate better, and we might be able to find solutions where we both can agree, or maybe we might not find a solution to agree both, but we wouldn't have bad feeling to each other. We wouldn't have bad feeling to each other. therefore we wouldn't feel hurt and being harmed, and therefore we wouldn't feel pain and suffering. But, you know, on other hand, when we have that selfish attitude, self-centered, egoistic mind, you know, even we agree on, even we have some opinion, some suggestion, even when agree, still we can hurt each other. We might think, say, you know, we agree, but you didn't show so much respect. The way you said, the way we express. Even we might not say with the word, but in our mind, we feel that he or she wasn't so respectful. And then your egos get hurt. And then you started to have bad feeling, ill will feeling towards that person. You know, or maybe sometime, you know, someone by some nature, you know, person is late by some little, and then your ego get hurt, and you said, you know, that person's was not respectful to show at the right time, didn't, you know, all small things. When we have egoistic mind, selfish, we can make everything complicating. We can interpret everything in a wrong way. Even that person has no intention, even didn't do much, you know. And so that is the key, you know. That is why working on our mind is so crucial. So crucial. Definitely, there is no doubt we have to change systems, certain systems, you know, in every field, you know, the system can be improved too. But if people doesn't start to work with their mind, even we change the system, there is not going to really be a change in the field reality, because the people have that mindset. I mean, there is so many laws that have been passed, being Nepal, India, this country, and the rest of all over the world. But not much has changed, despite those strong laws, because people have not changed their mindset. You know, for example, in India, you know, they have a big law about discrimination according to the caste. Long time ago, passed by long time ago, and big, and even strong laws. But it continued. Not only it continued quite strongly, because even though there is law, people's mind has not changed. People's attitude has not changed. Of course, it's not only India, also in Nepal too, and probably many other countries in different things. On the other hand, when each of us work with our mind and change our mind, there's no requirement of police, there's no requirement of military, there's no requirement of the law. It is possible when people, and so therefore, you know, it has to go together, you know. And that is important. Sometimes we miss that point. Sometimes we miss that point. We always look for outside to solve the problem. Always outside. It has to go together while we work with our mind, changing our attitude, changing our perspective, changing our mind. And then at the same time, working with the you know, the system and so forth, then there's more hope. There's more hope to have those changes. Otherwise it becomes quite difficult. And so that is where here, or that is why the emphasis here, as in the mind training, it always comes back to ourselves, back to our mind. So I think there was one question, so how am I to think about situation where an individual goes from blaming others to violence against others innocently standing by? I think, again, there is no doubt, when sudden harmful behavior are done, violently, whether it's physically or verbally, emotionally, whatever, when it is done, of course, if there is any way that it can be kind of stopped, we have to stop it. But at the same time, with more compassion, more understanding, more compassion, more understanding to the very persons who is acting in a violent way, by understanding why is that person acting violently. Because of that person's selfish attitude, because of that person self-cherishing, because of that person egoistic mind. So instead of blaming the person, we can blame that person's selfish attitude, self-centeredness, egoistic mind. We don't blame the person, we blame that person's mind, that selfish mind, that self-centered mind, that delusions, that egoistic mind. At the same time, because that person's violent act is harming someone else, we have to stop that. If there's any way we can, if we have any means, a way to stop, we have to stop it, but with more compassionate, more kind, more understanding. That's the key. And all this teaching that we will be go through is mainly, again, all the Lojong or mind training teaching are that. So I think that is the key. As I was mentioning before, I think maybe one of the early classes when I first came, or I don't know, I think maybe not that long ago, maybe. Yeah, like when I saw the video of the officers kneeling on the Josh, on a neck for that long, of course, the first reaction, I was a little bit kind of upset and a little bit even, angry, But then, I just recognize that, and I just have to walk it in, and then trying to see, whoever is acting that way is because of their own delusions. If they don't have that delusions, if they don't have that selfish attitude, self-centeredness, egoistic mind, they wouldn't behave that way. If they have more compassion, instead of selfish attitude, self-centeredness, if they have more compassion, more kind, they will never act that way. They will never behave that way. And so therefore, when you understand that, then you definitely, it gives you the space to feel, to understand that person better, even you totally disagree with such behavior, you don't approve at all, but you can feel for that person. You can feel compassion for that person, you know, and I think that's the key. That so just because you have understanding compassion, does that mean that that person shouldn't be, you know, punished? You know, does that mean the law shouldn't take its own course? No, there is a law. It has to be taken according to that. Whatever it is, it has to follow through that, but with more kind, compassion, and more understanding. And I think that's the key. So I think maybe we'll stop here unless anyone has any questions. Yeah. So yeah, I think yeah. So someone has written thank you. Yeah. So I guess that is all. I think for 1 week your homework is really investigate, analyze, and think on that. You know, so that we hear about those teaching all the time, how all the problem and suffering come from, you know, selfish attitude, self-centeredness, and that. But you know, we know a little bit on here on theoretically, you know, intellectually, but in our everyday, in the way we feel it is totally opposite. You know, we always doesn't feel it is because of myself. We always kind of feel there's outside there. That is why I'm suffering. And that person or that situation or this and that, all the time, this and that is why I'm unhappy. That's why I'm suffering. That's why I'm upset. And so on. And because we haven't understood from the better depth of our understanding from the experientially. So in order to really understand that experientially, it is really important to really apply that whatever happens in our life, really trying to see and connect that experience, however we're feeling, whatever unpleasant feeling, emotions we are going through, and see whether it has any relationship, any connections to our selfish attitude, with our self-centeredness, with our egoistic mind. And if we do that again and again, and the more you see that, the more and you feel that, not because the Buddha said, not because the teaching said, but because you understood with your own experience. Through that, because you yourself has done observations, investigations, and you are able to see that connections, then maybe that will start to have some changes, transformations in our heart and mind. And when the teaching, we hear that teaching, when you sit, then you can see, oh, it's really true, absolutely true. At the moment we struggle, you know, well, the teaching said that, but I'm not so sure, you know. Well, that apply for some situation, but it doesn't apply this one. So, you know, your mind struggles, and you always kind of have all, because again, because due to our previous imprint and habitual way of thinking, that come natural, that way of responding, that way of feeling, and that, you know. So the homework should be really, we can go through our past experience, we can go through our present experiences, especially maybe starting with our present experiences, however we are dealing through, and see whatever unpleasant, difficult feeling that we are going through, feeling, where does it has any connections, relation to our egoistic mind, selfish, self-centeredness or not. And that's so trying to see that is important. And sometimes if some situation we might not be able to see immediately because emotion is too strong. And sometimes that can be obstacles to go further, to go that. It's like you have fear, and then because of fear, you couldn't process further, you know. But if you didn't have fear, you might process and you could have seen the things differently. And sometimes our emotion, whatever emotion, can block us. And if that happened, then we go to the past experience, some of the past experiences, unpleasant experiences, painful experiences, and see where does that feeling, whatever we felt, pain, suffering, why did we feel the pain and suffering? Because we felt we were hurt. We're hurt. Why you are hurt? Why was I hurt so much by that person's behavior, actions, situations, and so forth? Because, and then see, is it because, you know, your egoistic mind was hurt? Because your need was not satisfied? You know? So I think that would be the homework. It would be nice to do that kind of reflection, contemplation, meditation, even is, you know, 10-15 minutes a day, if not more. I think that will be helpful. Homework to do. Reflection, contemplation, meditation on that. For 1 week, you just try to put effort to really trying to understand that, this point, with your own experience, not just from the listening and reading, but with your own experience. Okay, so we'll do the dedications. May all beings everywhere, plagued by the suffering of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by the depressions. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with trouble be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing and hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth. Those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rain, bountiful harvest. May all the medicine be effective and all wholesome prayer bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from all their elements. Whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightening cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I think, okay, we do the dedication. Oh. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Tupso changshin jamgun jawe, tenzin jompe we kunso toko zui, choso kuwe le mo tu. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.